My name is Dan, and for 3 years, I worked the night shift at a storage and archive facility, a government-contracted document warehouse about 30 miles outside the city. Most people don't even know it exists. It's one of those places without a website, without a listed phone number, without visitors. Just a long, windowless concrete building along a quiet stretch of service road. If you've ever seen a distribution center, imagine that, but smaller, quieter, colder, and with only one person inside most nights. It was just me, midnight to 8 a.m., 5 nights a week. People assume that a place storing documents can't be scary. They imagine rows of filing cabinets, fluorescent lights, dull paperwork. That's not what this was. This place didn't store public documents. It stored the weird stuff. Boxes that had been sealed since the 70s. Old police microfilm nobody wanted to admit existed. Evidence from closed investigations that never happened. Federal incident logs that weren't supposed to be written in the first place. I didn't read any of it. You'd be fired on the spot if you were caught opening a sealed container. But I learned very early on that some of the boxes inside weren't normal. Some of them hummed. Some felt warm to the touch. One of them smelled like rain-soaked soil, no matter how many times we had the building professionally cleaned. My job was simple. Scan barcodes, check chain of custody logs, handle retrieval requests, and keep everything secure. Boring. Until last winter. Until the night I decided to open one. It was a Thursday, January 11th. My shift had been slow. By 2 a.m. I was on my second cup of cheap black coffee, zoning out at my desk. The facility was always silent at that hour. Even the HVAC sounded like it didn't want to be awake. Then my terminal beeped. A document retrieval request. That was unusual. Night requests happened maybe once every 6 months, and usually for something mundane. I opened the request window. It was a code I'd never seen before. GHST-0213-FRAGILE. Priority. Immediate. Hand delivery only. Even stranger, the request came through a channel I didn't recognize. Usually our clients were federal agencies, law enforcement, or sometimes corporate legal departments. But this one didn't list a requester name at all. Just internal. Level 4. There was no level 4. Our facility had 3. I tried to reject the request. The system wouldn't let me. I tried to forward it to my supervisor. The message bounced back with an error I'd never seen. Routing denied. Custodian must comply. I sat there for a full minute, confused, heart beating just a little too fast. Whatever GHST-0213 was, someone wanted it badly, and they wanted it now. So I did my job. I grabbed my flashlight, badge, and retrieval cart and walked into the darkened main archive. The archive was a massive rectangular room the size of a football field, with ceiling lights that dimmed to half power at night. Rows of tall shelves stretched into the distance. Boxes, crates, sealed containers, all meticulously labeled. But the deeper in you walked, the darker it felt, even with lights overhead. I always chalked it up to the way the long aisles funneled perspective. I scanned the barcode ISIL 17, Section F, Tier 3. Aisle 17 was one of the oldest storage aisles. The shelves were still metal rather than polymer, and everything stored there was pre-1990s. When I stepped into the aisle, My flashlight flickered once, just once. But in that moment, every hair on my arms rose. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. But I swear the air felt colder, heavier, like I'd walked underwater. I shook off the feeling and approached Section F. Tier 3 was just above eye level. I reached up and pulled the box forward. It was heavier than I expected, wrapped in thick, yellowed paper and sealed with wax. The wax symbol was unfamiliar, not a government seal, not a private seal. It looked hand-carved. The label read, GHST file 0213, fragile, do not disturb contents. I placed it gently on the cart. Then something behind me moved. It wasn't loud, just a soft scrape, metal on concrete, like something dragging one foot. I spun around and shined my flashlight down the aisle. Nothing, just boxes and shelves stretching into darkness. I told myself it was my imagination, that the silence was playing tricks on me. But as I walked back toward the main office, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was walking behind me, keeping pace, just out of view. Protocol required me to log the box, confirm its condition, and place it in a tamper-proof carrier for transport. But the moment I set it down, the retrieval system pinged me again. Another message. Open and verify contents. Confirm status immediately. This had never happened. Not once in 3 years. I called my supervisor's emergency number. It went straight to voicemail. I emailed the department. The email bounced. I tried calling the main administrative line. No service. It was like the lines had been cut off entirely. The message flashed again. Custodian must comply. I stared at the box. I knew opening sealed materials was grounds for termination, but the directive overrode everything. If I didn't follow protocol, I could lose my job anyway. So I cut the wax seal. The smell hit first, like old soil, wet leaves, and underneath, something sour. Inside the box was a file folder, thick, swollen, as if whatever was inside had absorbed moisture. The front was stamped with the same carved symbol as the seal. There was also a small audio recorder from the 80s, dusty but intact. And under that, a Polaroid photograph. I pulled it out. It showed a night scene, a grassy field filled with headstones, and standing among the graves was a person, tall, thin, head cocked too far to one side. Their face was blurred, but the blur wasn't like an out-of-focus shot. It was smeared, as if something had moved their face across the frame. On the bottom of the Polaroid, someone had written, March 13, first appearance. My stomach twisted. Before I could examine more, the audio recorder clicked, by itself. Then it began to play. A man's voice, shaky, terrified. If you're hearing this, we're already gone. It doesn't stay in one place. It follows the night. And if the file is open, it knows. For God's sake, do not look directly at... A loud scraping sound cut him off, then screams, then silence. My hands shook. Something very wrong was happening. I tried to put everything back, reseal the box. That's when the power went out. The entire facility was plunged into pitch black. No lights, no emergency glow, nothing. My flashlight flickered, sputtered, then died. I was blind. I scrambled for my phone. The flashlight worked, but barely. a weak cone of light, enough to see shapes, enough to see movement. Because at the far end of the office, silhouetted in the doorway, someone was standing there, tall, thin, head angled sharply sideways, exactly like the figure in the Polaroid. I froze, breath caught in my throat. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink, just stood there, face obscured by shadow. My phone vibrated. I looked down. A new message from unknown. Don't let it see you. Too late. The figure stepped forward. Long strides. Unnatural. As if its joints bent wrong. I grabbed the box and bolted for the emergency exit. Behind me, footsteps followed. Fast, dragging, scraping. I slammed through the exit door into the loading bay, but the bay was wrong. This wasn't the facility's loading area. I stepped into a graveyard. A massive one. Endless rows of headstones stretching into darkness. Fog swirled around my ankles. A cold wind blew through trees that shouldn't have been there. I turned around. The door to the facility was gone. Just an old wrought iron gate. And standing beside it, the tall figure stepped forward, tilting its head, studying me. I ran. The fog got thicker as I sprinted between tombstones. My breath burned in my lungs. Somewhere behind me, the thing gave off a low, guttural exhale. A wet, dragging inhale. Like something trying to remember how to breathe. As I ran, my phone vibrated again. Unknown. Do not turn around. Footsteps behind me grew louder, faster, closer. I ducked behind a large mausoleum, chest heaving, trying to stay silent. The figure's shadow passed along the stone wall. It stopped, turned, listened. I cupped a hand over my mouth. The figure leaned its head toward the mausoleum, and the stone began to crack under the pressure of its touch. I glanced at the Polaroid in the open file. The date on the bottom, March 13th, was wrong. Someone had scratched it out underneath. Tonight, I looked at my phone. Tonight's date was March 13th. The air went still. Too still. I risked a peek around the mausoleum. The figure was gone. Then a cold hand wrapped around my ankle. I screamed. It yanked me backward onto the grass, claws digging into skin. I kicked wildly, connecting with something soft, spongy. The grip loosened just enough. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the only visible light, a single lantern flickering near the center of the graveyard. Someone stood beside it, a man in a torn uniform, his face pale, eyes wide. He waved me over frantically. "Hurry!" he shouted. "It's coming!" I ran toward him. He grabbed my arm and dragged me behind an open crypt. "You opened the file," he said breathlessly. "You weren't supposed to." The figure's footsteps thundered toward us. The man shoved me into the crypt. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. He stepped outside, closing the stone door behind him. And then, silence, followed by a single wet snap. The man screamed once and fell silent. For a long time I stayed inside that crypt, trying not to cry, trying not to breathe too loudly. Eventually, the footsteps faded. Eventually, the fog thinned. Eventually, the crypt door creaked open on its own, and I was standing in the facility loading bay again. No graveyard, no fog, no bodies, just fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The box was still in my hands. The seal was intact again. The Polaroid was gone. The recorder was gone. I stumbled out into the main office. Power was back. Lights on. Everything normal. But there was one difference. On my desk sat a single sheet of paper, a Polaroid photo. This one showed me running through the graveyard. And behind me, blurry but unmistakable, the tall figure reaching for my back. The timestamp on the photo was tonight's date, tonight's exact time. But someone had written 2 words underneath it: not finished. I quit that night. I haven't gone back to the facility. I've moved twice since then. But every March, around the 13th, I get a new Polaroid in the mail. Sometimes it's a picture of a graveyard. Sometimes it's a picture of my house at night. Sometimes it's a picture taken through a window I'm standing next to, and in every single one, the figure is a little closer. Tonight, there was no Polaroid in the mail. Instead, when I walked into my living room, the same file box was sitting on my coffee table, unsealed, waiting. And inside it was a single photograph, a picture of me asleep in my bed, the figure standing right beside me. And on the back, finish the file. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it wants. But I know this. The graveyard wasn't a hallucination. The file wasn't a glitch. Something followed me home. Something that doesn't belong in this world. Something that only appears at night. And something that knows my name. If you ever receive a file labeled GHST-0213, don't open it. Don't acknowledge it. Don't touch it. Because once you do, it doesn't matter where you run. Night always finds you.